Some people like swinging really big swords, other people prefer swinging smaller swords, and it's this category that we'll be focusing on today. Welcome to the Attic Dungeon, my name is Sam, and whether it's creating a dashing swordsman or swinging 2 warhammers and breaking a lot of stuff, I'm here to help you with everything. Apparently I haven't made a single character creation guide that focuses on dealing damage yet, probably because I don't tend to focus on being the damage dealer of my party myself. But that doesn't mean I don't enjoy theory crafting a good damage dealer. Now, dual wielding in 5e is often kind of dismissed as being ineffective because it is very easy to gain extra attacks with your main hand weapon in 5e by leveling in a class that gains the extra attack feature or getting a haste buff or other effects. It is impossible to get extra offhand attacks. Your offhand attacks always use your bonus action and you only ever have one of those in any given turn. Another aspect is the fact that your main hand weapon gains your ability score modifier to its damage and your offhand attack does not. So at level 1, if you're wielding 2 short swords, your main hand short sword will deal, let's say, 1d6 plus 3 because I have 16 strength, and your offhand will only deal the 1d6. So there is a bit of a difference, and that makes gaining extra attacks with your main hand weapon all the more effective if you don't properly focus on dual wielding. Of course, in this episode, we are going to milk this offhand attack for all it's worth and make sure dual wielding becomes a fun and efficient way of attacking people. As per usual, I'll provide 2 builds and we'll cover everything you need to know level by level, and at the end I'll provide you with some role-playing inspiration. These builds will be focusing on melee dual wielding. What? No ranged builds? No, I'll keep those for another video, so I'm afraid you crossbow people and thrown weapon enthusiasts will have to wait for when I do a ranged dual wielding build. Today's clip is all about sword swinging and hammer bashing with more weapons than you can swing a stick at. So let's have a look at today's common ground and get this show on the road. If we are going to be melee dual wielders, there is one must-have feat, and surprisingly, that feat is called dual wielder. You master fighting with 2 weapons, gaining the following benefits. You gain a +1 bonus to armor class while you're wielding a separate melee weapon in each hand. You can use 2 weapon fighting even when the one-handed melee weapons you're wielding aren't light. You can draw or stow 2 one-handed weapons when you would normally be able to draw or stow only 1. Now, the benefits here are obvious and very decent. +1 armor class keeps you alive. Removing the light restriction from dual wielding allows us to wield the d8 weapons instead of the d6 weapons in both hands. So instead of using 2 light hammers, you can use 2 war hammers, which is a very decent bump to our damage output. And the last advantage, the one that allows you to draw and stow 2 weapons at the same time, quickens you if you get caught with your pants down. If somebody ambushes you, you don't need 2 turns to draw at your 2 weapons. You could do it in 1 turn, which gives you your maximum damage potential immediately, but also adds the +1 armor class. Otherwise you would be down an armor class the first turn because you only have 1 giant stick in your hands. So this feat makes you tankier, allows you to hit harder and get into action quicker. It's a little bit of everything you want, so take it, love it and never leave it. That brings us to the matter of race, and I'm going to say something here that is pretty relevant. These builds are actually perfect for a variant human. Being able to pick up dual wielder at level 1 and still have both your primary ability score and then probably constitution or whatever at 16 is nothing short of amazing for this build. But I have a love-hate relationship with variant humans. People tend to pick these just for min-maxing and not at all because they want to play a human. And for me personally, that is not the way to build a character. So while it's a great, even excellent choice, and I encourage you to pick Variant Human if you're playing something min-maxy, your party is very min-maxy, your Dungeon Master is very min-maxy. Variant Human will absolutely not disappoint you. But for my builds today, I'm not going to pick it in favor of more flavorful races. Now, before we delve into the big stuff, both builds are multi-class builds. I know, crazy, right? I don't think I've ever done those before. That technically means we are going to use optional rules though, so check with your Dungeon Master if he or she is okay with multi-classing. Then again, feats are also optional rules, and I've been using those like all the time. Stuff like multi-classing feats and maybe even the Variant Human are optional rules that are technically accepted as being part of the main body of the game, but just to be sure, check with your Dungeon Master. Our first build today is going to be a Barbarian Fighter mix. I absolutely love the image of an angry fellow smashing things to bits and pieces with hammers and axes, so that's what we're going to go for here. Let's grab a nice race to smash stuff with, and that is going to be the Half Orc. The Half Orc gives us a nice bump to strength and constitution. They also have savage attacks, which adds more dice when you score a critical hit, and they have a way to bounce back from 0 HP every so often. So that's really nice. The fact that we gain the right ability score bumps also gives us more points to invest in other ability scores to flavor our character. Class-wise, we will be starting out with a level in Fighter because this gives us every proficiency ever when it comes to weapons and armor, which helps when our goal is smashing things with big weapons. More importantly, we pick up the 2-weapon fighting style at level 1, which allows us to add our ability score modifier to our offhand attack straight from level 1. That is a considerable damage increase, and it will obviously scale whenever we bump up our strength score. We also get Second Wind, which gives us some decent self-healing, but it does use our bonus action, so we're maybe not the biggest fan of this, since we want to do more smashy and less healy. As usual, Point Buy yields us a reliable set of ability scores to work with. We put 14 in strength, 15 in con, and put 14 to dexterity as well, since we'll be changing to medium armor in a while. The rest goes wherever you want to put it. I put my last points in charisma, not because my half-orc has a Colgate smile, but because they have a racial proficiency in intimidation, and this will enhance that proficiency even further. On level 2, I would like to pick up a level of Barbarian to access our inner rage. Rage is nice. Not only because it gives us damage resistance to physical damage, but also because it adds a +2 on all of the damage of our weapon attacks, both the main and the offhand. So even when you're only level 2, while raging, both of your attacks will be able to add +5 to their damage roll. That is pretty damn strong. Mind you, Rage does eat up 1 bonus action at the start of combat, but the bonus damage you get from it will easily compensate it if your fight lasts long enough. There will also be a few cases where you might be able to pop Rage right before combat, so go for it. Just make sure it sounds logical RP wise. Make sure you can explain why something ticked you off so much you just berserk the place, alright? Don't just do it to min-max. Same rule as always, people. It's a role-playing game. Make it work. A quick note, I mentioned we would be switching to medium armor. That actually already happens at level 2. Why? You cannot rage in heavy armor, and that's kind of the entire point of going barbarian. So let's dump the heavy armor after level 1 and pick up medium armor. You should be able to actually start with the heavy armor and then sell it off and buy some decent medium armor with your gold that you get from selling it, plus whatever you gained in the first level. Should be quite okay. Now, from here on out, I suggest picking up barbarian levels until you get extra attack at Barbarian level 5, and then we will be picking up some more fighting levels to pick a subtype there as well. If you want to pick up the fighter levels first, that's fine as well, but it means you will be without the dual wielder feat for quite a while. An easy fix to this, of course, is to go Fighter 4 Barbarian X, which will work very nicely for characters of which you know that they won't make it into the higher levels, or if you're just eager to start smashing things with bigger weapons quicker than the other ones. So, seeing as I'm going Barbarian first, our second level of Barbarian will most importantly grant us Reckless Attack. You will be able to have advantage on all of your attacks, attacks of opportunity included, but others will have advantage against you as well. This works really well when you're fighting a boss, or in general when you're not surrounded by a horde of tiny things, because one or two enemies that have advantage on you, you'll probably live to see another day. You're a barbarian, you have a lot of health and stuff. But if there's like 10 of those and they all have advantage against you, there's going to be critical hits all over the place and you will die at some point. Level 3 gives us our Barbarian subclass, and I had to think for a while about which one to take here, because none of the paths available to a Barbarian care particularly about dual wielding. In fact, quite a few of them eat up bonus actions like they have a bad case of the munchies, and that is of course a big no-no to us. You could take the Bear Totem Barbarian path to make your Barbarian a bit beefier, but I already used that in the HP tank build, and today we are focusing on smashing stuff in the face, not on staying alive. So what I picked in the end was the path of the Zealot. Why? Well, at level 3, the first creature that you hit with an attack each turn will take 1d6 plus half your Barbarian levels as extra damage. Since we have 2 attacks every turn, the chance of pulling this off every turn is pretty high, and that's good stuff. At level 4, obviously, without a doubt, we're picking up Dual Wielder. Get rid of those tiny axes and puny hammers that you've been using, and upgrade to the beefiest of D8 weapons that you can find. Warhammers, battle axes, long swords, use whatever you want. Level 5 will give us extra attack, which is really great. 3 attacks per turn with plus 5 damage each while raging, and the first one will get an extra d6 plus 2. From Zealotry, the damage is real, ladies and gentlemen. I said before that we'd be going Barbarian until we gained the extra attack feature, and that has happened, so we're going back to Fighter for now. Level 2 Fighter is pretty well known by everyone. You gain Action Surge. An Action Surge is very straightforward. Once every short rest, you can gain 2 actions in your turn instead of 1. For our Barbarian, that means that you would be able to do 5 attacks in a turn, once per short rest. That means if there is something that you really would like to see dead in a few seconds, pop Rage on turn 1 and use your Action Surge on turn 2 and just beat it into a bloody, messy pulp. Your turn 2 will consist of 5 times 1d8 plus 5 plus 1d6 plus 2. That is a hell of a lot of damage, people. Level 3 gives us our Fighter archetype. Battlemaster would not be a bad choice. The superiority dice add more depth to your gameplay, and they can also be used to enhance your damage. You gain 4 of these at the start, and you can use them on every attack, so also on your offhand attack again. It's a great way to Nova the place up a bit more. But, you know, we're going to do something different, and we're going to sync with our half-orc racial today and pick up the Champion archetype. Yes, I know the Champion archetype is not the most... let's say it doesn't give you the deepest gameplay in the world, but because we're only taking 3 levels in Fighter anyway, all that we're going to get from it and all that we want from it is a great way to Nova the place up a bit more. But, you know, we're going to do something different, and we're going to sync with our half-orc racial today and pick up the Champion archetype. Yes, I know the Champion archetype is not the most... let's say it doesn't give you the deepest gameplay in the world, but because we're only taking 3 levels in Fighter anyway, all that we're going to get from it and all that we want from it is the fact that we now deal critical hits when we roll a natural 19 as well. Seeing as we can lure out advantage whenever we want, thanks to reckless attack, and we have 3 attacks per turn on any given normal turn, you're bound to crit quite a few times during your smashy bashy career, and your half-orc savage attack racial will add extra damage dice, 1 extra damage die actually to it, and later on in the barbarian level up chain you're going to gain a feature that adds even more dice to your critical attack, so they become really powerful. So at level 8 you'll have a very nice dual wielder who will crit pretty often and swing hard when critting. Your next few ability score increases should be spent on raising strength to 20, since each of your 3 attacks will become more accurate and more painful. After that, flavor the character however you want. If you go Fighter 3 Barbarian X, you will have huge critical hits, which will happen often, and you'll still have 1 ability score increase that you can use on any feat, or maybe raise your constitution or any other score that you want. If you go Fighter 4 Barbarian X, your crits will be smaller, but you gain an additional ability score increase to spend on whatever you want. This allows you to gain a bit more utility, because let's be honest, the way I built this build, it is really all about grinding goblins to dust. But it does it in a very reliable way. You can kind of predict your damage. You will have some nice spikes when you crit, but it is a very stable dual wielding build. And let's be honest, nothing gets a table as excited as a good critical hit or two. Which is going to be in sharp contrast with our next build, which is going to be a Nova build, as people call it. That means it does alright all in all, but it is really shining when it can focus on these big playmaker turns where you focus all your resources into blowing the place up. Let's have a look at it. Another strain build. Sam, you crazy bastard. Are you denying the godhood of dexterity in 5e? No, I'm not, but it just turned out this way because of the classes that I picked. This build could technically be a dexterity build. You could swap in some armor class and athletics for more initiative and a more relevant dexterity save. Go for it, nobody's stopping you, but I like heavy armor, you know this. Our race this time around is something that I really don't play that often. It's half-elf time. Extra skills are nice, and we can buff both charisma, strength and constitution in one go, which is really good for paladins and the other class that I'm planning to add here. Dark vision and an extra language make for a nice sturdy package. Half-elves really don't have any super defining racials, but they're just an all-around decent race to pick, even when not playing a charisma-based class. Point buy allows us to start with a 16 on both strength, constitution and charisma, after adding our racial bonuses of course, but it leaves very little points to invest in other things. You can raise 1 other ability score to 10, but that's it. If you want a more even build, you could also start with 14 charisma. You should be fine, but if I allow my inner min-maxi person to come out for a bit, 16 is going to be better. Level 1, we start out as a paladin, as I've already hinted at, mainly again to gain all the proficiencies with weapons and armor. These are really important to us. It also gives us a teeny amount of healing with lay on hands. It gives us 5 HP of healing per day per paladin level. I guess it's something. Level 2, more paladin. We are gaining a lot of stuff though. First off, we're gaining a fighting style. We are going to take the defense one, which means we gain +1 armor class. The other styles don't really match up with our gameplay idea. Paladins don't have access to weapon fighting style. We gain spells, but not a lot. The most important spell, I think, there's 2 actually that you can focus on. One is Bless. Everybody knows Bless. It will allow you to hit more reliably, not just you, but 2 other people in your group as well. The other one that you can take is Divine Favor, which instead focuses on dealing more damage because it allows you to deal 1d4 radiant damage on every weapon hit that you do. Since we already have 2 weapons that we're swinging with, it is a nice buff at level 2. Smiting is very important to what we're going to do with this build. What it does is that whenever you hit someone with a melee attack, you can spend a spell slot to boost your damage. A level 1 spell slot adds 2d8 extra radiant damage, and you can go up to 5d8, which means that you just used a level 4 spell slot. Any higher spell slots that you use will just be the same as if you're burning a level 4 slot, so that might not be the wisest thing to do. If you're whacking fiends or undead, however, you can get an additional die for free, so that would be a grand total of 6d8 smite damage with your level 4 spell slot. Smiting can trigger off any melee attack, so again, as dual wielding paladins can smite on both the attacks we perform. At this level, that is actually ludicrously explosive, but you only have 2 spell slots, so you can do it once per day. But hey, if you encounter some type of boss fellow and you can hit him twice, just smite him out of existence. Your DM is going to love you. Level 3 allows your paladin to swear an oath, and for his trouble he will gain some extra prepared spells and an extra spell slot. We are going to go Oath of Vengeance here. You also get some decent crowd control from your channel Divinity, but we are more interested in the spells, namely Hunter's Mark is one of them. Hunter's Mark is kind of similar to Divine Favor. It's a concentration spell that uses a bonus action, but this one allows you to deal 1d6 extra damage on every attack to one target that you pick. If the target dies, however, you can use another bonus action to move the mark to another target. So obviously you're going to have to pick between the 2 spells that I just explained. Divine Favor is going to be more oriented towards fights where you have a lot of smaller targets and you don't want to spend a bonus action every turn moving your Hunter's Mark around, because those are attacks that you just lose. Hunter's Mark will deal more damage when you're fighting 1 or 2 strong big fellows though. You don't have to swap around that much, and your die allows you to hit for more. Hunter's Mark also scales a bit with level. It doesn't become stronger, but you can keep it up for a longer period of time. If you cast Hunter's Mark with a 5th level spell, you can keep it up and running for a full day, 24 hours, providing that you don't lose concentration. Alternating between these 2 spells is going to allow you to min-max your action economy quite a bit. Oh yeah, by the way, also you're immune to poison and diseases now. That is actually really handy now and then. At level 4, we stop paladining and we start barding from now on. Pick a free skill and whatever instrument you would like to play. You also get bardic inspiration. For now you can buff somebody's attack roll, saving throw or skill check with 1d6 3 times a day. It's a nice buff, but those dice are going to become something really amazing later on. Last but not least, you get to pick up a bunch of spells. You get to pick 2 cantrips and 4 level 1 bard spells. I do suggest picking up Vicious Mockery as one of your cantrips, because up to now you have no decent ranged alternative if you should ever fail to run up to your target. For spells, to be honest, you can pick almost whatever you want. Try to steer clear from concentration spells, because we already got those figured out for now. Take whatever your team seems to be missing. A good sleep spell can do wonders, but so could a well-placed Thunder Wave to give you some AoE potential. But let's be honest here, most of our spell slots are going to be used for fancy smite work anyway. Speaking of spell slots, the laws of multiclassing dictate that we're still stuck at 3 spell slots right now. Our level of Paladin only count, our 3 levels only count as 1 level of spellcaster for the sake of multiclassing spells. So we count as a level 2 spellcaster for now. When it comes to spell slots, that means we only have 3, but hang in there, fellow dual wielders, it gets better soon. Like a level 5, for example. So Bard level 2, that means we pick up an additional level 1 spell. If your legs are a bit too short and you can't reach your target now and then, don't hesitate to pick up Long Strider. It's concentrationless extra movement, like I've explained in my buffbot video. It's good stuff. Also, you get Jack of all trades here, which is a decent buff to all of your non-proficient skills. You also get Song of Rest, which adds some extra healing when you're taking short rest. But mainly, ladies and gentlemen, we now count as a level 3 spellcaster according to the rules that we just explained. So we have just doubled our available amount of spell slots. We have 4 level 1 slots and 2 level 2 slots now. We don't know any level 2 spells yet though. You could upcast your level 1s, or you can use those level 2 slots to have a super duper cool smiting turn once per day. This is the point where the Nova part of the build becomes very apparent. Imagine you're fighting a very tanky mob, you hunters marked him last turn, and now you're going in for the punchy part. If both of your d6 weapons hit and you decide to smite with your level 2 spell slots, you will roll 2d6 plus 3d8 plus 3 damage times 2, minus 3 damage because we don't have the 2-weapon fighting style yet, which really is an absurd amount of damage in one turn. Yes, it is very resource intense, but it is sure to raise an eyebrow or two. And by the way, as I said, it's a Nova build. It's what we do, ladies and gentlemen. Don't forget that if you would happen to critical hit, all of these dice are effectively doubled. So you can, instead of 3d8 smitey dice, you roll 6d8 smite dice. That is a hell of a lot more of damage. It's not going to happen that often. Just enjoy it when it happens. Maybe even once you get more spell slots, always keep 1 or 2 spell slots behind for when you land a critical hit to make sure that something is really dead. Level 6 means more important Bard stuff coming our way. We'll start with the easy stuff. You get expertise in 2 skills. That double proficiency modifier is really nice to have. But we're very interested, of course, in our extra level 2 spell slot and actual level 2 spells. If you manage to cast it right before combat, so you don't have to waste a turn on it, blindness or deafness, that's what the spell is called, can be a really fun one, seeing as it's concentrationless, and if you blind someone, you have advantage on all the attacks that you make against the target. Remember those critical hits that I just talked about? That's how you get them. If you want to up your range game, pick up Shatter. Everybody loves a good Shatter. If you want to be the more supporty type, Lesser Restoration allows you to fix whatever boo-boo your party members manage to pick up rather. The rule is still the same though. Pick spells that you believe will allow you to complete whatever your party is missing, but most spell slots are going to be spent on smiting while dual wielding. Speaking of dual wielding, it's about time we buff that again. Our level 3 Bard allows us to pick a college. That's the Bard subclass, and we are going for the College of Swords. This allows us to finally pick up the 2-weapon fighting style. So finally, after 6 levels, we can now add our strain bonus to our offhand weapon damage. It stabilizes our damage quite a bit. We can now also use our Bardic Inspiration dice to power our Blade Flourishes, something unique to the Swords Bard. Blade Flourish works as follows. Whenever you take the attack action, step 1, you gain 10 feet of free movement speed. It's a nice little bonus. Step 2, when you hit with any attack, so again that means main hand and offhand, you can choose to spend 1 of your Bardic Inspiration dice. Doing so will add the damage that you roll to your attack, and you can also choose one of 3 effects. The first one is that the same number that you roll for damage on the bardic die is also added to your armor class until your next turn. Very nice, very strong. I love this effect, but then again, you know that I favor tanking a lot, so that's my flourish. The second one allows you to hit a second target for the same amount of damage that you rolled on your bardic die. So you deal it to both the first and the second target. It's nice, it's a little bit of AoE if you need to hit a second target for a tiny amount of damage. Mind you, of course, the second target has to be within melee range of you as well, so 5 feet. The third one is the mobile flourish. When you do this one, you can push the target for 5 feet plus the number that you rolled, and then you can use your reaction to follow up to the target. It's a bit of a weird one. I think it's a bit more situational. It can be used to break pack tactics maybe on enemies, or to push an enemy into your allies so they can just punch him into oblivion. Experiment with it. The main thing here is that, again, we get extra dice to deal damage with on every attack. Maybe not every attack though, because we are still limited to 3 bardic dice a day for now, and they're only d6s, but that will improve over the course of the next few levels. For now, maybe keep them for when you really need one of the buffs, or when you crit. Obviously, always keep one for crits, because then you get 2 for the price of 1. Level 7, so Bard level 4, we finally get an ability score increase. We are, of course, not using it for that. We're going to pick up the Dual Wielder feat. Fun side note, along with the armor class from the Dual Wielder feat and the one that you gained from your Paladin fighting style, your Palabard actually has an equal amount of armor class to one of those normal sword and board characters. So your armor class is going to be pretty decent by now, alongside the fact that you have a very explosive hitting potential. This hitting potential is furthermore enhanced by the fact that we now also count as a 5th level spellcaster. We just received 2 level 3 spell slots, and we don't know any level 3 spells yet, so use them to smite big or go home. On to our 5th level of Bard, then level 8. Another important one. We just keep racking up those important levels. First and foremost, level 5, add some level 3 spells to our repertoire. I could suggest Catnap if your party has people who like short rests, and guess what? Now that you're Bard level 5, you too like short rests. Why? Well, starting from 5th level, Bards gain Font of Inspiration, which means that your bardic dice reset on a short rest. Your dice have also evolved into d8s at this level, so remember those blade flourishes, which were still kind of meh a few levels ago, now have upgraded themselves to being really frequent, really nice damage buffs. It might be a bit of a weird trade-off though. You're giving up an explosive 4d8 smite to regain 3d8 worth of bardic inspiration and some short rest healing. Even though your damage output, technically speaking, goes down a bit, you do gain this super amazing flexibility of your bardic inspiration / your blade flourishes, some healing, all in a very short period of 10 minutes. I would say it's very well worth it on many different occasions. As per usual, I stop going over the levels after level 8, but it is well worth noting that level 9 brings you the extra attack feature if you take Bard 6, adding even more Nova potential to a turn by being able to smite 3 times in one turn. Now that is a hell of a lot of damage. Any larger character will melt under the sheer power of your radiant damage. Whenever you gain an ability score increase later on, strength will be your priority here. You'll be running around with 16 strength for a very long time, so getting that up to 18 at I believe level 11 is going to be super important. I advise against picking up more levels of Paladins, because you will never gain level 9 spells if you do so. Of course, if your campaign will never get to the point where you pick up level 9 spells, picking up the extra Paladin level can shortcut you to an additional ability score increase, so you can more rapidly balance out the minor strength issue. Afterwards, I don't know, max strength, bump charisma a bit to gain more flourishes and better spellcasting. Maybe there's a feat you would really like to take that goes really well with this build according to you. Go wild. I give you a very nice basic build to build on. That's not complicated at all. Make it your own. Do something with it. So I know I ignored you dexterity dual wielding fans a bit today, so here's something to make up for that. There is a feat called defensive duelist, and what it does is if you're wielding a finesse weapon with which you are proficient and someone attacks you, you can use your reaction to add your proficiency bonus to your armor class for that one attack, potentially causing the attack to miss you. This goes really well with dual wielding based on dexterity, because you usually have a bit of a lower armor class than the build that I presented today, and this way you're still quite capable of defending yourself. If I apply this build to, this feat rather, to today's builds, if you take my Paladin, the dexterity route, he should have no problem whatsoever picking up this feat, which will still give him a rather high defense at the highest levels of gameplay, and also my strength Barbarian Fighter can pick up this thing. He had 14 dexterity to make the most out of his medium armor, and you don't have to use dexterity as your combat stat with finesse weapons. You could give that strange Barb fighter 2 rapiers and still have him use strength to smash things to pieces with those 2 rapiers while still picking up this defensive duelist feat at the end to increase your defensive. Just wanted to add it to today's episode as a little bonus for all you dexterity dual wielders out there. So after showing you a very stable build and a very explosive build, it is now time to give you some role-playing inspiration. Grun is a weird balancing act. He has the strength of an orc mixed with the inquisitive and more gentle nature of humans. This makes him an ideal mercenary. He's less likely to muck things up because he's not as easily angered as most orcs, but he's not as feeble as some humans who try to make a living solving another person's dirty work. Grun enjoys most of the work he does. He keeps away from jobs that are a bit too shady, and in general he enjoys a good standing with most of his contractors. All of them are very wary though. They like Grun well enough, but they all realize that angering him is a terrible idea. Grun knows this as well. He tries to downplay it though. A lot. And this is not a thing he does out of negligence. No, the reason he tries to downplay it is because he knows that his rage is also one of his best weapons when the going gets rough. And no one wants their enemies to know just how good their best weapon is. As long as everybody else is just downplaying it as simple orcish fury, Grun's doing a good job. In truth, it's much more than that. It's a very barbaric fury, but inspired by something almost divine. His father was as strong as they come, and his mother was a very devout woman, spending a lot of time taking care of the sick and wounded in the local temple. She took care of his father after a battle. He stayed, they grew closer to each other, and Grun was the result. Maybe it's not right to speak of love when talking about orcs, but Grun's father felt something, a connection. Maybe their abnormal union gave rise to this divine spark inside Grun, this special rage he feels and uses when the time is high. When Grun gets angry, few people live to tell the tale. Rafa had finally followed in her father's footsteps. She was a paladin, just, honest, devout. She was one of the best in her year. After taking her oath and swearing to help those in need, she traveled a lot. Nothing weird here. The order expects you to spend your younger years traveling, spreading the goodwill of the order and learning about the world and its ways. Any paladin will need this knowledge when a real challenge arises. On these travels though, she saw so many things she never encountered before. Mainly the arts captured her interest. She was well acquainted with the power of steel and divine justice, but she had very much underestimated the power of songs and poetry. During her stay in Grunest, she became fast friends with a bard who was staying there, learning loads of stories and songs from her. The bard, Eden, sensed her aptitude for the esoteric arts and gave her some basic instructions in the finer details of being a bard. How to use words and music to achieve things unseen or unheard of. Rafa was very interested, and the discipline she had displayed during her Paladin training allowed her to master these new arts with relative ease. She bent him a bit to her will though, making sure the bardic arts fit in with her Paladin fighting style. When she returned to the Order's headquarters, she had already gained quite some fame as Rafa, the Paladin poet of the Sword Coast. Well then, ladies and gentlemen, that's enough from me for today. Please don't hesitate to discuss the builds in the comments down below. Leave a like, subscribe, click the bell, follow me, don't stalk me though. And if all goes well, I'll see you again in 2 weeks in the Attic Dungeon.